So you sit down to work on something that actually matters, like this podcast, a
Yes.
strategy decision, a creative project, something that moves the needle. And before you get 5 minutes in, something else lands in your lap. And this could be anything from a client question, a team issue, if you have tiny humans, children issue, if you work from home like some of us do, a process that breaks down, a decision that somehow only you can make. And by the end of the day, you solved 12 problems that weren't on your list. So, yes, you were productive and you got things done, but the one thing you actually needed to do and think through is still waiting there, looming over your head.
How crazy is that? Like that happens so often. You get so sidetracked and then you wonder what you're even doing and if you can even get were initially supposed to do to get done. And this is one of the most common and most draining experience in, owning your business. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels like it's all yours to carry. And it's that mental load of being the person everyone brings their problems to. It could be exhausting. I mean, even in your personal life, it feels good to be the go-to person, but sometimes it can be really exhausting. It's like, I need to catch my breath right now. But here's what most people don't realize. The reason why everything feels like your problem, it's not because you have too many problems. It's because of how problems are being defined or escalated and how they're being solved in your business.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, I love being the person that you feel like you can count on and, bring your problems to if you have no one else. Like, I love doing that for people, but it is equally exhausting when it feels like, well, who's going to take my problems when I can't get my own list done because I'm doing everybody else's? So
Exactly.
today we are talking about that sort of thing, and it's all about critical thinking and problem solving for leaders, what that actually means to think clearly under pressure, how to stop being the problem in your own business, and how to build a culture where problems get solved at the right level instead of everything having to come through you. We're taking you out of the bottleneck. So, whether you have a team or you're running solo, this episode is going to change how you look at the problems landing on your plate every single day. And if this is already the kind of conversation you want more of, we have a free gift for you. It's called the 20-minute clarity map, a quick, practical tool that will help you set meaningful priorities and the soft skills to make them happen. Inside this guide or this map, you will learn how to pick 3 goals that will make the biggest impact, pair each goal with a soft skill to boost follow through, define simple, realistic actions you can actually complete, and then we will show you how to stay consistent without burning out. So the link is going to be in the show notes. Go sign up and we'll see you in your inbox.
So today we're going to cover why everything feels like your problem and what's actually driving that, the difference between reactive problem solving and critical thinking, how to assess and solve the right problems at the right level, and how to build problem solving capacity, whether it's just yourself or if you have a team. You can now follow us on LinkedIn at Entrepreneur Encounter. We as business owners, we feel almost shame or like guilt. We let that negative self-talk when everything feels like it's on you, like you're solving all the problems. And in that case, if you're solving a lot of the problems, it must mean that something is wrong. It's not necessarily how you probably set things up, but more often it's not about the setup, it's about the pattern that makes sense when you're starting out. And oftentimes what you built in the beginning is going to stop serving you because as you grow, your business grows. So you have to kind of look at the patterns to see how internally everything is going on with yourself and with, if you have a team, with your team. And the first step is understanding why this pattern exists before you try to fix it.
You mentioned something that I want to point out too, is like you built it so you know best in the early days of your business. You are the system. Most of us, very few of us start with a team. We start solo and then we expand and grow. And so in the very beginning, you made literally every single decision because you were the literal only one who could do so. There was no one else. And that made sense at the time. But that habit often outlasts the necessity because as you grow your team, and if you don't start navigating who handles what or who is responsible for what, your team will continue to learn to bring everything to you. So, because if you've historically had the answer, solved the problem, or made the call, the people around you have learned that that's just how things work in your business ethos. They're not being lazy, they're just following the pattern that you established, most likely subconsciously. Without a clear framework for what kinds of problems require your involvement, everything will rise to the top. And that's where you become the bottleneck. People will default to bringing you things rather than solving them because there's no defined alternative. This is where I will shout out a very important piece in any business is having those SOPs, standard operating procedures, especially for solopreneurs who are escalating and growing. That dynamic, it helps you start filtering out problems, whether it's your own problems or your team's problems. What actually needs a decision right now, what can wait, what doesn't need solving at all, and everything will start to feel, it keeps everything from feeling equally urgent and equally yours because you have taken the time to write out these procedures, to keep things up to date, and delegate the responsibility to someone else. There is a hidden cost, and every problem that lands on your plate that didn't need to is a withdrawal or a energy thief from your most limited resource, and that's your focused thinking time. And while it doesn't seem like a big accumulation, over time it is, because I will say, from a personal standpoint, me switching from task to task to task to task to task, if I do that too often, I will lose all focus completely, and I will have to completely get up from my desk, walk away, go do something else, stand outside for a few minutes if the weather is nice, or go in the kitchen and do something physical, do the dishes or do the laundry, something physical to idly get my mind back into, okay, I'm ready to sit down and be the leader of my business. So the accumulation of these small unnecessary tasks is one of the biggest drains in leadership because it just robs you of your capacity.
Yes, that lovely thing of time, it's it goes by so fast. And then when you're trying to make all these decisions and you're trying to figure out what the next thing to do, and now you don't want to do anything anymore because your brain is taking up all those questions, and now you're drained and you just were like, okay, I'm going to close my laptop for the day. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Let's take a break.
That is accurate.
Yeah. No, for sure. It sure definitely is. Especially, I remember there were times when if I had multiple calls in a day, I would not be able to focus on tasks anymore. If I had, if we recorded an episode and I had a client meeting and I had to meet with a team member from another client and my brain was mush, I'm not doing any tasks that day. So every time I would write out all my things I had to do for the day, I'm playing out, and I looked at it. I'm like, okay, I have 3 calls today. I'm not doing anything else today. That is it. That is it.
I think that starts with the awareness of what's happening, and that's kind of leads us into the next major thing. Is let's talk about the difference between reactive problem solving and critical thinking, because I think this is where a lot of leaders get stuck without realizing it. You learned if I have 3 calls, nothing else is getting done. That was critical thinking in real life. Reactive problem solving is, I think, what most of us do most of the time. And something comes up, we address it, we move on. It feels productive, it feels busy, but it's actually keeping us in a cycle that is very difficult to get off of. Critical thinking is actually very different. It's slower, more intentional, and it asks different questions, which then leads to different results. And it's what separates leaders who are constantly reacting from leaders who are actually building something long term.
So reactive problem solving asks, what's the fix? It's focused on the immediate issue. Get it resolved, get back to work fast, efficient, and often incomplete because it addresses the symptom without the root cause. Critical thinking asks, why did this happen? And what does it tell me? You're looking at everything as a bird's eye view. You're looking for patterns. You're asking whether this one-time issue or a signal of something systematic. It takes longer in the moment, but saves enormous time in the long run. So just when I was talking about knowing the fact that if I'm having 3 calls that day, then I'm not going to do anything else. I can't do that. So whatever works for you, however you want to plan out your day, just making sure that you're able to, get what you need to get done, but not to overwhelm yourself and be at full capacity. The firefighting trap, everybody's constantly putting out fires. Somebody did this, somebody did that, nothing's getting done. When you're always in reactive mode, you never have the mental space for critical thinking. And without critical thinking, the same fires keep coming back. Reactive problem solving without critical thinking is it's a loop. It's not going, and it's not a fun loop to be in.
I think to end that loop, especially if you're learning to do this with expanding your team, and this is important for me as I'm training my son to help me in my business. Here's what I'm learning critical thinking actually looks like in real practice. And I kind of touched on this before, but it's pausing before solving and asking, is this the real problem? Or is this a symptom of something else? And separating the urgent from the important before deciding where to put your energy. So I do ask a lot of questions. I have my son test a bunch of different things so that he's learning how to answer stuff on his own. Hey, does this look good? Does this not look good? Because I do Pinterest graphics, and he does help me with that sometimes, of like moving the content over. And so I'm starting to train him on how to do the graphics themselves. And so, is this a major problem? Oh, I lost something. Well, let me teach you how to do it. And then you can think, is this an emergency or is it not? And then asking what would need to be true for this not to be a problem. And that question often reveals a lot of the root causes: lack of training, lack of confidence, something. And then looking for patterns across multiple problems rather than treating each one in isolation, because they're probably related to each other in some way, shape, or form. The questions that shift you from reactive to critical include, what's the underlying cause here, not just the trigger? Has this happened before, and how often? If I solve this the way I always have, will it come back? This probably should have been at the top. And then what would solving this permanently actually require? So here is something with all of those that I've shared. Here's what I want you to ponder on this week. Specifically, what problems keep coming back? Because if it's something that keeps showing up, you haven't properly solved it. You probably just put a Band-Aid over it. You've managed it just a little bit. And that's the difference. Are you pausing long enough to ask these questions, to look at it from multiple different angles so you can solve it 100% so it doesn't continue to come back to you or stops being a problem at all?
Yeah, just get rid of those problems. I hate problems. No, I'm just kidding.
No problem, Titter.
Never. I mean, we're going to all face, it's going to happen. No matter what you're doing in your professional life, in your personal life, no matter what you're doing, something's going to come up and you have to use your brain to figure out what the next step is. And if you're unsure what that next step is, ask somebody, have a conversation with somebody that you trust, and just word vomit and just kind of figure out what to do. So let's get practical, because knowing that you should think more critically is one thing. Actually filtering your problems and deciding where your energy goes is another. So let's talk about how to assess what actually deserves your attention and how to create a structure when problems get solved at the right level, whether that's by you, if you have a team, or no one at all. Not every problem deserves a solution. Some things that feel like problems are actually just friction, the normal expected difficulty of doing something that matters. Before you solve anything, you can ask, does this actually need to be fixed, or does it need to be tolerated? So there's this 3-level filter. You solve it yourself right now. So that's level 1. There's a true emergency, decisions only you can make. things with real immediate consequences. Level 2, you solve it with input or delegate it. Decisions that require your judgment, but not your hands. This is where coaching your team, talking with the people that you're working with, talking with your clients to bring solutions, not just problems that become critical. And level 3, don't solve it at all. Problems that will resolve on their own, decisions that don't actually matter, issues that exist because of a system gap. Fix the system, not the symptom. If you have a team, you want to teach your team to bring you solutions, not just problems. One of the highest level shifts a leader can make is changing the expectation from bring me that problem to bring me the problem and your best thinking on how to solve it. This builds critical thinking, capacity in the people around you. I know that for me, at least, like if I'm having a problem, I tend to overthink it. And if I come to somebody, talk to Dana, talk to my husband, whomever, I'm like, okay, I'm having this problem. But then when I start to like talk it out loud, I'm like, oh, wait, I solved it myself. Like, I understand it. That's how I feel like when you're talking about like, don't solve it. Cause it's not necessarily like an emergency, but it's just something that you need to get out of your head, something that you just need to vomit and talk about it. For those that are, solopreneurs, before you let a problem take up your mental capacity, run through it. Just like I was saying, like, does this need a decision today? Is this actually in my control? Is solving this best use of my thinking right now? Most problems that feel urgent are not urgent. Again, just have a conversation with somebody that you trust and just get everything out of your head.
I think things like that, this question specifically, does this need a decision today? If not, put it on your L10, your IDS section, identify, discuss, and strategize, and put it on there so that you and whoever's on your team, when you do this meeting, can talk about it, identify any root causes, discuss solutions, and then implement those solutions. If it is urgent, then you have channels for that. But most of the time, you just need to be aware. And then to calm or to alleviate the mental space, like you're delegating it to tomorrow, you're delegating it to your next meeting. Or if you are able to delegate to a whole nother human, do that too. But again, solopreneur. So delegate it to a time when you can give it your full attention, whether that's your weekly L10 or you have a CEO day once a week. I do that. So I have a weekly L10 meeting with myself on Mondays. And then I have my CEO day where I don't do any client work and I'm only building or revising something internally in my business. So those are the two times where if it's not something urgent, it gets pushed to those 2 days for me to solve then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And we actually did an episode on that. So we will link that down in the show notes so that you can go look at that, watch it, listen to it, and understand what that is and how that can work for your business.
The last piece I want to talk about is building problem-solving capacity, which that was the perfect segue, actually, in your team and in yourself, because the goal isn't just to solve today's problems better. It is to become the kind of leader and business that handles problems well over time, not just the one and done, because problems, no matter how much we solve them, will continue to rise in some way, shape, or form. And so that's more of a culture thing and a habit building thing and a soft skill teaching thing. And that all starts with you because you are the head of the company. You are the head of the brand. And so everything flows down from you. And so how you utilize your soft skills and how you amplify your critical thinking muscle, then you narrate your thinking and you're teaching them or you're modeling the correct way how to handle critical thinking and problem solving. So here's as you narrate, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm questioning. Here's how I'm deciding. And this will teach people how to think, not just what to do. They will want to emulate that because you'll be handling things in a much more composed manner. And this allows you to reward the process and not just the outcome. Because if someone on your team makes a thoughtful, well-reasoned decision that doesn't work out, and you constantly respond with disappointment about just the result, you're training them to avoid making decisions because they're learning to expect that disappointment. You want to reward the quality of thinking and the outcomes will follow that.
You want to create safety around being wrong. Everybody makes mistakes. And I've seen this so many times in the workplace, the jobs that I've had, the clients that I've had, all the things. And, you have to be okay with the people in your space making a mistake. We're all humans. And critical thinking requires the willingness to be wrong. We're not all right all the time. Sure, I could be cocky and say, I'm right, you're wrong. Like, no, we're not going to do that. So you want to be able to allow those in your space to test an idea, have it fail, and try again. I mean, Dana and I, when we started this podcast, we had no idea what we were doing. Yes, the sound probably sucked, and we didn't know, like the way that we did things probably weren't as good. You have to be willing to test that idea and be okay with the fact that it's going to take a bit to grow. And if people, in your space, if you have a team, your clients are afraid of being wrong, they'll stop thinking critically and just play it safe. And let's not do that, because as you grow, you have to be in that growth mindset. You have to be willing to, okay, I'm wrong, and that's okay that I'm wrong, and have conversations around that and be like, okay, it's fine. You want to build the reflection into your rhythm. The most critical thinkers aren't smarter. It's just the way that they move and reflect that. They take time to review what happened, what worked, what didn't, and what they do differently. I mean, going back to the L10 meetings, that's even 20 minutes by yourself and just looking at what's going on in your business and figuring out solutions and coming up with different ideas. For solopreneurs, invest in your own thinking skills the same way that a leader invests in their team. Read, get a book, like ask hard questions. I'm all about asking hard questions because I want to understand, I want to learn. And how else would we learn if we don't ask questions? Find thinking partners, your peers, get into a networking group who will challenge your assumptions and help you see what you're missing.
I think that is probably my favorite, because I know I've said it numerous times that community is so important and is going to help you succeed the most. So I have a weekly mastermind group that I go to through my co-working space, and we constantly challenge assumptions and help each other see what's missing. We also celebrate the things that, like, the process, not just the outcome. Like, we celebrate the whole journey, the good, bad, and the ugly of being entrepreneurs. And that's something that I have learned, is that the businesses that handle problems best aren't the ones with the fewest problems. We all have a plethora of problems, and anyway, in personally and professionally. But they're the ones that have built the capacity in their people, in their systems, and in their leadership style to think clearly under pressure. And that capacity is built on purpose, not by accident. Anyone in our group will tell you nothing happens by accident. If I wake up tomorrow and I have just landed a 6-figure contract, that was not by accident. Someone did not accidentally stumble upon my stuff. That is years. I'm not even going to say months. That is years of consistent and disciplined action of me putting in the work, posting on, sharing on social media, connecting with people in real life, pitching myself to talk to other people, like in leaderships, and hosting my own master classes. That's me consistently and disciplined, asking hard questions, looking at things, solving problems, but building the structure, the systems that will keep those problems from repeating, and growing that way. There's nothing by accident. It is how we built things and continuously keep that momentum going through these critical thinking and problem solving mindsets.
Here's what we want you to take away from today's episode. Everything feeling like your problem is a pattern, and patterns can be changed. Reactive problem solving keeps fires from spreading. Critical thinking keeps them from starting. So we don't have to constantly put out fires. Let's not do that. Not every problem deserves your energy. Filter it out, solve it second. I mean, seriously, not every problem deserves your energy. Think about your own capacity. Building problem-solving capacity in yourself and your team, if you have one, is one of the highest leverage investments you can make as a leader.
So this week's challenge, if you made it this far in the episode, is to pick one recurring problem in your business, something that you have noticed keeps coming back. And instead of trying to solve it the same way you always have, we want you to sit with it and really pause to understand it, not just the trigger, but everything else. Ask what's actually causing it, ask what solving it permanently would genuinely require of you. And you might be surprised what you find when you stop reacting and taking the time to start thinking and solve permanently.
We thank you all for being here today. If this episode resonated with you, share it with another business owner who's in the thick of it right now. Sometimes the most helpful thing is a framework that makes the chaos make sense. And if you've been listening and something has shifted for you, we love to hear about it. You can leave us a comment down below if you're watching. Leave us, send us a message. It means more than you know. And as always, all of our information is in the show notes. Until next time.
You can now follow us on LinkedIn at Entrepreneur Encounter.
Thanks for spending time with us today. If something in this episode gave you a fresh perspective, share it with a friend or send us a DM. We love hearing how these conversations land with you.
And if you're curious about how soft skills can support your next season of growth, we each have more resources to share.
You can find Dana on Instagram at danas.desk.nc for Pinterest strategy and intentional marketing.
And Sarah at UR Rembert for team development, business leadership, and podcast support.
Until next time, keep leading with purpose
and growing with intention.